Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Film for Fans podcast, the podcast from movie fans for movie fans. I am your host, Ryan Dunlevy, and joined by my co-host, Rob Dunham.
Apparently, it's Black T-shirt day.
Apparently, it is. If you're watching on YouTube, you will know why. Welcome to the Film for Fans podcast. Make sure you tell your friends about it. If you do, DC will, in fact, let you choose the next movie that gets canceled. And that is a power you will want.
And if you don't, you will get complimentary tickets to BatGirl.
Yes, indeed. And that brings us to what will be in our episode today. We've got an excellent show. We will talk about the box office and what's upcoming this week. Arnold Schwarzenegger turned 75. So we have to get into that a little bit. We will cover the fact that BatGirl got canned. And we will break down Nope along with our watch list. All right, let's get started. We got a lot of stuff going on. Box office. Last week, the week of July 29th through 31st, number one in the box office in its debut, DC League of Super Pets. The children's cartoon made $23 million. Nope in week two made $18.6 million. Thor Love and Thunder in its week four did $13.2 million. That movie is at $301 million for its box office run. Minions: The Rise of Gru did $11 million to top $320 million. And of course, for the 10th straight week in the top five, Top Gun Maverick, $8.4 million. Total is over $650 million domestically. Rob, what do you make of the box office?
Yeah, that Top Gun number is just, it seems like it continues to impress the longer and longer it goes. The fact that a movie could be out for almost 3 months at this point and still be in the top five of the box office is insane. Compared to what we have typically been seeing. Not surprised that the League of Super Pets is number one, given all the star power that was involved in it. Certainly did not meet the level of Minions though, which made far more to start out with. So I'm not surprised where that ended up. One thing that I found interesting that is not in the top five of the box office was that Elvis passed 100 million domestic.
It did.
And is, I think last I saw, 234 million worldwide, something like that. And the budget was 85. So
yeah,
that's pretty solid for a biopic.
Yeah.
Movie.
And I think you're going to see that one crop back up again later this fall once or early next year when the year-end awards start coming out. I think you're going to see Elvis back in theaters.
That'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah. What I noticed, what I take from this is not anything about a specific movie, but just about this was not a big weekend for the box office. When your top movie only does $23 million, that meant people did not spend most of this past weekend in the box office. So there are some weekends that are like that. Most of the other movies have been out for a few weeks, and the new debuts were not that prominent. Therefore, not a lot of people went to the theater. But hey, some weeks are like that. DC League of Super Pets being the biggest profile one, not surprised. I wasn't sure how much Nope would drop off in week two. Had a decent drop off, but not a terrible total for its week two. All right. That's last week in the box office. Now, upcoming this week, we have three movies that are coming out. A movie I have been waiting for, one of the top movies I was looking forward to this summer, Bullet Train comes out this week. And this one stars Brad Pitt, Joey King, and a bunch of other people. And it's 5 assassins aboard the last bullet train, or aboard a fast bullet train, find out their missions have something in common. So if you've seen the trailers for this one looks fantastic. It's kind of a mix of action comedy coming out. Next up is Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday, starring Joe Coy and Lydia Gaston. And this is set around a family gathering to celebrate Easter Sunday. The comedy is based on Joe Coy's life experience and stand-up comedy. Interesting to me that Easter Sunday is not coming out near Easter Sunday, but
very far away from Easter Sunday, really.
yeah, it's kind of about almost as far away from Easter Sunday as you can get without coming back around the other side. But yeah, this is going to be a comedy. Obviously, this is based around the life of the stand-up comedian, so enjoy that. And the last one is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And I believe this is another A24 release, but it's when a group of 20-somethings plan a hurricane party at a remote family mansion. A party game turns deadly in the fresh and funny look at backstabbing, fake friends, and one party gone very, very wrong. So this is Amandla Stenberg, Maria Baklova, Rachel Sinet. I've not heard of any of these people individually. But there you go. So it's basically like a teen 20-something party gone wrong type movie. Rob, what intrigues you?
So first of all, a little peek behind the curtain here. If you had access to the show notes, you would have seen that Ryan called the movie Bulletin Train in the show notes, which made me think of an aggressive preschool teacher. But
autocorrect, man. Sorry.
Bulletin Train coming right on schedule. I am actually going to tip the apple cart here and go off the board because you didn't mention one of the movies that's coming out this week, because it's not coming out in the theater, but it is still a movie.
Okay.
And that is debuting on Hulu on Friday, the movie Prey, prequel to The Predator.
Yes.
And it is supposed to be pretty good from what I've heard from all accounts. I'm kind of surprised it's not being released in the theater. It was originally planned as a theatrical release. The reason why this is debuting on Hulu and not in the theater, just to give you a little background for those who might not know, is that when Disney acquired the rights to the Fox studio, 20th Century Fox, this was a movie that was in the very final stages of production, but Disney has decided that they do not want to release it in the theater. So it is debuting on Hulu instead. And that will be this Friday. But to me, it counts as a movie coming out, even though it's not in the theater. So I'm most excited about seeing Prey on Friday. But I am also intrigued a little bit by Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Just the trailers I've seen seem to make it look like it'll be kind of satirical and making fun of some of the culture that's happening around us, especially with younger people. So I think that'll be an interesting thing to keep my eye on. What was the first one again?
Bullet Train.
Yeah, I am interested in Bullet Train.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt always seems to deliver.
Yeah.
He is someone who definitely puts his mark on a movie when he's in it. Someone who takes the time to do his roles well. And I think this is going to sound kind of ridiculous as a statement, but I really believe it's true. I think Brad Pitt is underrated.
I agree.
Because I think he has been viewed as like this sex symbol or guy who's just, there to be a pretty face or whatever. But I think he's a much more talented actor than he has been given credit for.
Yeah.
I think even in movies like Ocean's 11 or, well, that's the big one for me. Even in a movie like that, I think he did a phenomenal job.
Well, and this is where, you have people who have longevity because they're good at one particular thing. Namely, look at like Liam Neeson, for example. He's very good at a specific thing, and there's always a market for that specific.
Would you say he has a specific set of skills?
I did. I didn't quite say that, but I did mean it. Uh-huh. Yep. But he deserves, I mean, Brad Pitt deserves to be in there as the top actors of his generation. I mean, he's still going decades later. He is not typecast in one specific type of role. He can play in a variety of movies at a variety of different levels. He's always good and always compelling. Yeah, absolutely. Bullet Train, I love the combination of the action, the train, and the Japanese aesthetic. I think that makes for visually, that gives you the opportunity to create a really, really interesting movie. And it seems like there's going to be a good balance of the action and the comedy to it, which I think will make for a fun late summer blockbuster type movie. It's not going to, I mean, it's not obviously not going to do like the same type of numbers as a typical blockbuster, but I think it's going to have some of those elements.
Yeah, I'm really interested in seeing what they do with it. It does look funny, and there's a good amount of action too. It looks like it will be a pretty stylistically shot movie, which you would have to have happen, I guess, if you're on a train the entire movie.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, that is what's in the box office this week. So there's plenty of stuff in there, plenty of opportunity for you to go out and check out movies in the theater. Now let's move to our discussion. And there's a big birthday in store. Yes, a Hollywood legend turned 75. And that is none other than Arnold. Yes, Arnold Schwarzenegger turned 75. And man, I gotta say, is there anybody with a crazier career path than Arnold Schwarzenegger? I mean, how do you go from being an Austrian bodybuilder to being an action star to being the governor of California? He's had a very bizarre and interesting career path for sure.
Yeah, I think you mean the governor of California.
Yeah. So just a little background on him. He has over 50 credits to his name, over $4 billion worldwide box office. And he ranks among the 40 highest grossing movie stars of all time, which is pretty amazing. That's a pretty amazing career for someone. And, he is clearly more on the action side, but he has done well on the comedy fronts as well. What do you think about when you think about Arnold?
Well, first of all, I think you obviously think of the action roles. I mean, he is the Terminator.
Yeah.
So, like, that's iconic. And then you think about some of the other things he's done comedy-wise, like you said, with Junior or Kindergarten Cop or Jingle All the Way, movies like that.
Yeah.
He has shown that he has a funny side as well, too.
Yeah, for sure. I think what stands out to me is his accent is so unique and quotable. Between the accent and his facial expressions, I think those are the two things that really just stand out when you think about Arnold. There is, I might get this name wrong, but there's a death metal band called, I think it's like Austrian death metal or something like that, that basically just plays metal music and then overlays it to Arnold Schwarzenegger quotes.
That's awesome.
So he is just like, if you ask anybody, almost anybody in the US can give you an Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonation and probably list 3 or 4 quotes from Arnold. He's just that, like, it's just his moments are that iconic, even though some of the films are not always that great. Like, he is iconic.
Yeah, my wife told me that if my Arnold Schwarzenegger impression didn't improve, she was gonna make me leave. But don't worry, I'll return.
Oh, jeez. All right, we got a lot of work to do. So let's get into that a little bit. Like, do you have personal favorite Arnold quotes?
Get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper. Yes. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I also enjoy in Jingle All the Way how they paraphrase and change some of his other previously famous quotes, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I just like and obviously I'll be back is
Yes.
probably one of the most quoted lines in the history of movies.
Yes. For me, there's so many good quotes from Kindergarten Cop. I think that's one of his most quotable ones, where it's not a tumor.
Yeah.
It's not a tumor. Who is your daddy and what does he do? He is ridiculously quotable. I love it. Okay, so as we reflect on the career of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I thought we'd go back and forth on. We have each of us make our own personal list of our 5 favorite Arnold movies. So let's go back and forth on this one. Give me one off your list.
So I would say that I think that they belong together as like all 3. I think there's 3 movies, but I think you do have to give The Expendables some credit, which was not mentioned in the article that we looked at. But I think those movies kind of made him relevant to a newer generation, or kept him relevant with the newer generation. Yeah. Because whether you like action movies or not, I think they were pretty well done for what they were.
And they came out at the exact right time before those guys got too old. It was kind of like a hall of fame of action movies, of action heroes. And it was kind of one last hurrah for that entire generation of action stars. And aside from the nostalgic, they did manage to create some pretty good action movies. So yeah, I agree. One on my list is, I mentioned it earlier, it has to be Kindergarten Cop. From his comedy side, I think it's the best one of his comedy movies. And it is interesting because the first 2/3 of it's a comedy and the last 1/3 is like severe drama. There's like a tone shift right there, which is a little abrupt at times. But putting Arnold around children was just a brilliant idea. It really was. It was a brilliant concept that Arnold executed amazingly.
So one of my favorites and one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time is Jingle All the Way. So I have to include that on my list just because I think he plays the desperate father looking to do anything to make his son's Christmas go well perfectly. And Sinbad is also great in the movie. They have a great back and forth, and it's even got some action in it at the end. So I think it's a Christmas movie that pretty much everyone in a family could like. And I don't know if that's true of a whole lot of movies. So I think that's why it deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, and it did perfectly capture what really seemed like a late 90s craze, where there would be one particular toy that year that everyone would just go nuts for, and it would be ridiculously hard to find. That was a big thing in the late 90s, and this movie really captured that dynamic pretty well. We'll go with another one for me, Twins, with Danny DeVito. It's kind of a classic comedy staple where you take the really big guy and pair him with the really short guy, and there's just a natural comedic element. I was just watching some Seinfeld, and you saw that when they would do Mickey and Kramer, and the comedy interplay between those two was really excellent. But Danny DeVito is an excellent actor on that. So Twins was a lot of fun.
Switching gears a little bit, I think you gotta obviously mention Terminator.
Yeah.
And I would say Terminator 1 and 2
Yeah.
probably both deserve recognition if you're talking about
Mhm.
a top 5 list. Terminator 2 being probably one of the few sequels that is at least as good as, if not better than, the original.
Yeah. And it was peak Arnold action star. Really did a good job of taking advantage of. They basically saw what went well in Terminator, and then up the ante in Terminator 2. Yeah, absolutely.
And they took advantage of, had the opportunity to use some groundbreaking technology too, which even rewatching today, it's obviously dated, but it doesn't look horrible.
Yeah.
So for it to come out when it did, the way it did, is really impressive.
Mm-hmm. Next one I got to mention is True Lies. True Lies was a quintessential comedy, or not comedy. I mean, like drama action movie. It brought Jamie Lee Curtis was excellent in that movie as well, in addition to Arnold. And I love the kind of sequencing and plot. Basically, the twist and the turns that the movie took. It's one of those movies that represents super well a genre, which is, I've spent a lot of time going through 90s action movies, and True Lies is one that absolutely encapsulates that genre.
And I also think you have to mention Predator when you're talking about the prequel to Predator that's coming out this weekend.
Yeah.
To kick off like what became a multi-million-dollar franchise. And it's interesting how serious the first Predator movie is.
Yeah. Yeah.
They really sold you on the stakes of what was going on with the alien incursion. So I think you have to consider Predator.
You do. Well, I think we've hit most of the best movies from Arnold. I mean, we didn't talk about Conan the Barbarian, but hey, that's all right. Can't hit everything. But yeah, Arnold turned 75, guys, and it felt like a good time to reflect on that and the contributions Arnold has made to the movie landscape and to the lines that are stuck in all of our brains for all time. And of course, one of the best accents. All right, so now we got to move on to another story, which is interesting, sad, funny. I don't know. We'll see. BatGirl gets canned. That's right. BatGirl has gotten canned. BatGirl was a movie that we've all heard about for a long time now, and Warner Brothers has decided not to release the movie at all. No streaming, no theaters, nothing. Dead as a door now. Really fascinating story, this one. This just to give you a little background. This was a movie that was originally slated to have a $75 million budget, turned into a $95 or $90 million budget. The principal shooting was done. Almost everything about the film was completed. It had a decent amount of stars. It had Leslie Grace from In the Heights. It had Michael Keaton returning as Batman. J.K. Simmons was in this one. Brendan Fraser was in it. And it's done. They killed it. Now, the reasoning is rather interesting on this one. Basically, what has happened is that there was, as Warner Brothers merged into the new company with Discovery and all of those type of things, the CEO at the top is new, and he completely reversed. His goal was to completely reverse everything the previous CEO had done, which was really heavily streaming favored. And the previous CEO is the one who famously brought all of Warner Brothers content directly to HBO Max same day of release in 2021. which had up and down effects for sure. But basically, their new CEO decided to reverse all of that. And the story, which we'll link to an article about, the story basically says that Batgirl kind of got caught in between. It wasn't a big enough movie to be something that would feature in a box office, and they didn't feel like spending the millions and millions to promote it and to upgrade it to a bigger stature. It was also too bloated to just dump on the streaming service. And so what it appears is that they're just going to take the tax write-off for it, which they've decided is the most economical way to make money off of this. Rob, what do you make of this story? This is kind of crazy.
Yeah, first of all, I'm sad for Brendan Fraser that we don't get to see him in this, although he is coming out in within the year. He'll be in Darren Aronofsky's movie The Whale as the main character. So looking forward to that, but I wish I could have seen him in something else too. It does it's fascinating, and you wonder, and I've seen this said by some people cynically, that you wonder if they're trying to get some groundswell of oh no, release the movie, like petition to get it released, like the Snyder Cut thing happened. But I just don't feel like there's as much of desire or clamoring that would happen for this movie. So if they're trying to do that, I don't think it's going to work out for them.
Yeah.
It's really hard to imagine spending almost $100 million on something and not releasing it at all.
And I can't say I completely buy the idea that this was just caught in between release for streaming and theater. There has to be, I have to feel like if they were at all proud of this film, of what they accomplished, that they would release it. There has to be something. I have to feel like this says something about the quality of what was made. I mean, maybe I'm off kilter here, but I feel like even if you released a slightly lower budget film on theater and streaming, and if you thought it was a good film, I think you'd want it out there.
Yeah, the word is that it was not screening very well, but even then you adjust things and release the movie.
Yeah,
you would think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very, very strange story. And I'm wondering if, like, what does this do for DC? I mean, DC's brand already has some tarnish on it because they have not been able to feel like they have any sort of cohesion to what they're releasing or any sort of flow to how they're handling their superheroes. Not to mention they've had a lot of poor movies, and they just haven't been able to compound release upon release where they're putting things out of quality that people can count on. This has to be a black eye for DC, don't you think?
Yeah, and I don't know how many more eyes they have left.
Yeah. It's like that old joke. What do you tell a guy with two black eyes? You already told him twice.
Yeah.
And that it does seem like there's a little bit of that with DC. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how the tax. I mean, this is a lot of like inside studio head back room type stuff. I don't know what kind of tax write-off you can get for a movie. I don't know what the legal things that you do that allow that. I mean, it seems to me that it'd be hard to say that that's really your best plan, but maybe it is. But to kill a project that had this much publicity to it is very strange. What would you have done with this if the situation were what they're claiming it to be? What would your thoughts have been? Would you have spent the money to beef it up, or just?
What confuses me is that what I've read, they were thinking they wanted to move it from streaming to a theatrical release.
Yeah.
but then completely changed their mind. So I don't really understand why they couldn't release it on a streaming service.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would have done. Because you would think it would generate some revenue that way, but I guess they're thinking that utilizing the tax write-offs for it will be more successful than that, which is just, it does seem pretty hard to comprehend.
Hmm. I think it always just comes down to me, like, if you believed in a project, you would back it one way or the other. You would back it. If you thought that what they had here was solid, you would go through what it takes to make it, to beef it up and give it the marketing budget that it needs and roll it out. That's my thought on it. If it was worth rolling out, if you like the project, you do what it takes to release it. And the idea that you don't even want it out on streaming, I just don't buy the tax budget thing, I guess. But I don't know. So that leads me to a bit of a question on this. Like, what do you think? Like, I mean, you can throw this to BatGirl, or you can throw this to kind of anything else. Is it better to not release a bad movie and get the negative publicity to a movie that nobody has seen, or to release it? Which do you think is better? Is it better to kill a bad movie or release it and face the which is worse from a PR standpoint, do you think?
I think it's probably better to release a bad movie, because either right away or eventually a group of people will fall in love with the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's good or not. I think almost every movie there are people who like the movie.
Yeah.
And sometimes you like the movie because of how bad it is.
Heck, I like Battlefield Earth, man.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something to be said for a truly not great movie.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of very mediocre movies out there. And it's funny having that experience every once in a while. You'll go see movies you want to see in the theater, and you'll be like, oh, this movie's great, this movie's great, this movie's great. And you kind of forget that bad movies exist until you see one again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, especially as you get more discerning with what you know is going to be good and what you know you'll like and not like, you manage to avoid more bad movies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating. I don't know. I think there's a part of me that, like, wants to uphold a quality standard, and it's like, if you just put out a bunch of junk, like, the hit to your reputation is going to be such that it might be better just to kill it and take the short-term PR hit, because you and I will find out about it. Like, hey, this movie didn't get released. The average person probably is never going to hear about Batgirl. They didn't know about it. They didn't know it was coming out. They didn't, like, it just, life goes on without whatever. More people will see a bad movie. More people will be like, why does this movie exist if you release it? But I'm kind of with you. I think you should just let it fly. You know, let it go out and roll with it. If you let it get this far, see it the whole way through, release it. Okay, well, that's Batgirl. And now let's move on to our last discussion topic. Let's get into Nope a little bit. Both of us have had a chance to see it. The latest release from Jordan Peele. It's been out for 2 weeks now. And let's talk about it. So we'll do like we do with a lot of our reviews. We'll do a brief take with no spoilers, and then we'll get into some specifics about the movie. But we'll give you a warning first. All right. Basic thoughts, no spoilers.
The ability of Jordan Peele to build tension is just top class. Like, we'll probably get into some more specifics when we break it down in the spoilery part of the review, but he's able to make you sit on the edge of your seat emotionally, if you want to say it that way. And I think that his directing style leads the people who are involved in the movies. I think he is able to bring out the best of this kind of style out of people. Which I think there's something to be said for that. I think you say like the same kind of thing for different directors when it comes to different genres of movies. But there's a realism to what is going on in his movies, even if the idea of what is happening is way out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like this movie was. It still felt grounded, which makes it like scarier to me. So I just think that overall, I think he did a really fascinating job of building the tone in this movie through the main story and through the other story that was happening in the movie. We can talk about when we get a little farther here in the talking about it.
The biggest takeaways for me were, one, if you're on the fence about seeing this movie, it is not a horror movie. I don't think it belongs in the genre of horror, which is unusual because that's what Jordan Peele is known for. It fits well within a broad category of sci-fi thriller, and it fits right within a specific genre of that, which we'll get into a little bit more when we get into the actual movie. But there are a number of comparable movies that if you're not a horror fan, you will still appreciate this movie. And even if you are a horror fan, there's still enough in there that you will like. The performances are solid. Jordan Peele does an excellent job, like you said, creating that tension and navigating his story in such a way where there's always something going on, but the pacing is not like, he doesn't rush through this movie, but there's always something happening, which is interesting and speaks to a level of sophistication in directing. It's a director who knows what he's doing, is comfortable with his style, I think, is what gets revealed to me. It's a solid movie. All right, well, let's get into the specifics. This is your spoiler alert. If you do not want to know any specifics about what happens in the movie, you can skip over to the next section in the podcast. All right, Rob, what did you like about it?
Yeah, so like you said, I think it's definitely more of a psychological thriller than it is a horror movie. I do think there are moments in the movie that are horrific.
Yes.
Think about the monkey going crazy and killing an entire group of people on a soundstage. That's one.
Yeah.
And I think that's directly tied into when the monster comes and swallows up a whole group of people preparing to see it come. I think I really found how he built that story of what was actually going on to be fascinating, because the first time that one of the characters says that it's not a ship, you don't exactly know what they're saying. And it's like slowly revealed over time through the movie that the ship is actually the creature. So like, I don't know if this is where you're going, but in a lot of ways this is a monster movie. And it wasn't marketed as that, but I don't think there was a way that they could have marketed it as that without giving away the big reveal of what it actually looks like at the end.
Yeah, for me, the big thing surrounding this is this film is the newest entrance in a long line of films that deal with alien encounters, like that sci-fi element of alien encounters. My biggest comparable, the movie I think it most compares to, is Signs. that is immediately what I thought of as I watched this movie. Is like this is right in line with a movie like Signs. There's even a little bit of like Arrival in it, although Arrival has a much more psychological element to it, and has, I would say, a little bit more complexity, and it's a little bit more genre bending. But it fits right along those lines of aliens arrive on Earth and encounter humans, and that whole thing surrounding it. Independence Day goes into that. There's a bunch of movies that fit in this genre. A Quiet Place, I think, is another one that's comparable and similar. And with all of those movies, the big question for the director is, how and when do you reveal the alien? How and when do you reveal it? Do you just hold that tension and wait and show very, very little, or do you come right out? Do you come right out and show it earlier in the film? And how you navigate that can be the success, can determine whether this movie is successful or not. And some directors do it better than others, and some choose differently. I thought it was interesting how they unfolded the story with this particular creature. And I think he navigated that well. I think he held the tension in suspense as to what it was for just long enough, and then the movie switched into, okay, now we know what. Now we have to figure out how, and that shift I thought was perfectly balanced, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, I thought one thing that really impressed me, because I was probably like most people who saw the movie, very confused by how the movie started. In fact, wondering if how the movie started was actually an extension of the previous movie studio credit sequence.
I know. Especially because I haven't seen a lot of Jordan Peele movies. So I'm like, is this part of his, like, every movie studio, like Bad Robot has the little robot weaving through the.
Yeah.
Like, okay, the guy's a horror director. Maybe this is his credit thing. I don't know. Yeah.
But I thought that the interweaving of the two stories, especially when it related to Stephen Yeun's character motivation, was really well done. And that's after, I think I need to see it a couple more times, because I think I'll catch on with some things even more watching it again. But there was a lot going on there between how he related to the monkey going wild when he was a kid, compared to how he related to the monster, and how maybe he thought he could control it because he was able to be safe previously when he was younger, so he should be able to be safe now. Like he had some sort of power over chaos.
Yeah. And it was it was a fascinating movie that it did hold the tension the whole way through. Like, you were always suspecting, like, something's coming, and good directors will mix in moments where they just kind of relieve that tension for a second. Like the moment where you find out it's just it's a bunch of kids in masks in his barn. It's like, that's just that little moment to just relieve that tension, like build it up, let it go, relieve it for a second before building it back up again. It's those little moments that help you maintain the flow and the sense of tension that's going out. It's like, okay, this isn't the big event. We can calm down for a second. Those little moments of release are really helpful and pretty fascinating.
I also think it's really interesting that they chose to call the movie what they did. And because there are a couple times in the movie where the word nope happens, and I think in particular the time when Daniel Kaluuya's in his truck and he looks out and looks up and sees the alien and slowly closes the door and gets back in, like everyone knows he's about to say no, and it was just perfect.
What did you make of the two main actors on this one? with Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer.
So I think I saw someone say this, and I agree with it, that Kaluuya might be one of the best actors with his eyes in working, because he was able to express a lot of emotion and thought without saying a whole lot. I think the one of the very first scenes where he's with the horse, trying to get his sister to, come over and participate, and he's like, you can clearly tell he has no desire to be where he is in that moment, just wants to be away from people. It's interesting to see him have to kind of open up from that in order to, protect his family and himself. I thought he was phenomenal.
It's interesting to me. I'm of two minds on both the main performances. Daniel Kaluuya had a very, very difficult job. This was a very difficult acting task, because his character is supposed to be very reserved, very silent, lacking in confidence and lacking in self-assuredness. And so as a result, he has to play a lot of his character with his body language. And like you said, his eyes, the way he looks around, it's varying degrees of subtlety. It had to be an extremely understated performance. One of my thoughts, I'm going back and forth on this. I think he did a great job. I almost think he did too good of a job, and that his performance was so understated that I don't know if the payoff, I think, for his character, I think almost was hurt by the fact of how understated he was in his acting. Not completely, because I still think he did a really, really good job on it. But it almost was, like I said, it's almost too good. And I feel the same way with Keke Palmer's character, because she is the exact opposite of him. Loud, bombastic, all over the place, constantly talking. And they balance each other off in that way. But I almost feel like the same way with her. Like, it was almost the borderline of overacting at times. That combination worked really well together and still created tension. It's just I'm almost wondering if it was a little too much.
I think one thing that he did really well with is he created a bunch of characters that were all very different.
Yeah.
And that's not always the easiest thing to do in a movie, to make people who are so separate from each other, especially if you're trying to get them to join up and do something together. And I thought he did a really great job of that. And I've already mentioned it, but I think Stephen Yeun's performance was very impressive.
I agree.
Because there's a lot, I felt like there was a lot of background emotional distress and stuff that went into that performance that you don't see right away in the movie, but you can feel something is going on with his character before you find out exactly what happened to him when he was younger.
Yeah, and I really liked Brandon Perea, who played Angel. I thought that character was a very necessary element to balance out, to give almost to give the audience's a voice in the middle of this family drama that was coming on. Like, he's the outsider coming into this. He's the one who's kind of given the reality pitch to it, whereas the other two are very caught up in their personal dynamic. He brings the outsider perspective to it, which was really well and provided a lot of the humor in the movie. But yeah, you've had really 4 good standout performances in this film. Was there anything you didn't like?
Trying to think. I think it's really difficult to do a movie in such a confined space. Like you say that, like, it's in this whole valley, but it is literally just a valley. Like, it's literally just a couple miles. So I thought the use of the terrain and everything was done really well. I'm not sure how I feel about the reveal of the alien.
Hmm.
That would be the only thing, but I think that's something that I need to rewatch the movie a couple times before I make a final
Yeah.
decision on, because it was really a like an explosion kind
Hmm.
of like, here's the thing.
Hmm.
Because the whole time it's been surviving, hiding essentially in the form of a spaceship, and then you see what it actually is.
Yeah. Um, and this gets a little bit what I said about the Kaluuya's performance and the understated nature of it. But the solution to how you solve this alien problem, um, in films like Signs, in films like Arrival, even I was thinking War of the Worlds, where the solution to the alien presence presents itself in everyday life, is a well-known, not overused, but is a well-known thematic element to it. I didn't see as clear a connection in the behavior of the alien to lead to the connection with horses. You know, it didn't quite like it. I didn't quite. Maybe I need to watch it again to see that it was there. But basically, Daniel Kaluuya comes up with this idea like, oh, this thing that I've been using with training horses is very similar to how the alien's behaving, and so I'll treat it a similar way. And I didn't see the connection. He basically gives it to us, but I didn't see it in the film. I don't remember seeing it in the film prior to the reveal that, oh, this is what's going on. Also, the director, the film director, as it was, they did show, like, when he goes up and basically gets himself eaten by the alien monster. I initially had to think, why would he do that? And then I went back. I'm like, okay, they did kind of set this up, but it was really subtle, as it were. I'm fine with that, knowing that they did put it in there, and they did put it, but it was subtle, borderline too subtle.
Yeah, I think in overall, a very good movie.
Yeah, it's absolutely worth seeing. What last real bit on this is, what do you make of it in terms of Jordan Peele's canon of films? Where do you place this one, both within, like, because this is a different genre. This definitely breaks out into a slightly different genre than what he's used to. How do you?
Yeah, I think it just opens him up to the possibility of further exploring different areas of filmmaking, which I think he's capable of, and I'm very interested in seeing what else he might do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's that, and let's quickly hit up our watch list, movies that we watched over the past week. Rob, what'd you watch?
So I watched, not over the last week, I watched Nope, obviously, and I also did watch Elvis this week, finally. And have you seen Elvis?
I still haven't. I want to try and get to it, but I haven't gotten there yet.
I think it is really well done. It is almost 3 hours long.
Yeah.
The first hour and a half to 2 hours feels just incredibly frenetic. Stuff is happening all the time. Highly fast paced, but I think that's a reflection of what Elvis's career was like. So I felt like it was fitting. The story of what happened to him in the latter part of his career is really tragic, and I think Baz Luhrmann did a good job of making that meaningful. I think Austin Butler was fantastic. He sings a lot of the stuff. Some of the stuff is then blended with Elvis. But you can tell he definitely put a lot of effort into getting to the point where he could do this musically. And the one thing that impressed me, having not really had a whole lot of interaction with Elvis, my interaction with Elvis, I think, is the end of his career, lounge singer in Las Vegas, that guy. And there's so much more to who he was as a person.
Yeah.
And watching this movie and seeing some of the songs performed and listening to some of the lyrics, I caught myself like looking up to see, like, did he really write this song? And like some of the lyrics he wrote were like profound and challenging to the establishment and to people who wanted him to play and sing certain things. He was much more counterculture than I might have been led to believe or expected. And a very like introspective person who like wrote some really deep stuff. So it kind of opened my eyes to that a little bit. And I think that just visually, obviously, if you're going to a Baz Luhrmann film, you would expect it to be visually astounding, and it was that without a doubt.
Yeah.
Maybe to excess at times, but I thought overall it was a really well crafted movie. And then the other movie I had the distinct misfortune of watching because I have a daughter who just turned 12. I can no longer say that I have not seen High School Musical because I have seen High School Musical.
Man.
And it is every bit as terrible as I had expected.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Well.
Yeah, there's too much wrong with it to even begin to talk about it. So I'm just don't watch High School Musical unless you have to. Sorry, Zach.
Oh man. All right. I obviously also saw Nope, but I saw one movie I watched was The Russia House. I've been going through a list of Cold War movies as I've been researching them, and just a reminder, my piece about the top 10 Cold War movies is up on filmforfans.com, so make sure you go to filmforfans.com and check that out. But Russia House was a 1989 film with Sean Connery, where he plays like a writer who is somewhat recruited by British intelligence and the CIA to kind of infiltrate and make connections in Russia. It was okay. It was also based on a John le Carre novel, same as Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. It didn't have a bunch of payoff to me. I was never that intrigued with the movie the whole time I was running through it. Sean Connery is Sean Connery, so he's always interesting. But it was just okay. So that's what I'll say about Russia House. It definitely did not make my list for best Cold War movies. And the last one I saw, once again, it was on TV this week, was Moneyball. It's just such a good film. It's such a good film. It was so well written, well directed. Really captures the essence of what that particular era of baseball was about and what the A's were going through in that time. And it's just such an incredible story. And I think Aaron Sorkin is one of the best screenwriters of the generation. And what he did with Moneyball, along with Brad Pitt. Again, we're talking about Brad Pitt and how excellent Brad Pitt is at acting. And this is another dramatic role for him that went really, really well. And I've been a big baseball fan. I love it.
All right.
All right. Well, that is the show. Just a reminder to visit filmforfans.com. Check us out on YouTube. And until next time, enjoy the movies.